Justin Jefferson versus the worst pass defense in the league.
What could possibly go wrong?
Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Kia ora, Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans. Here we go again, baby. I'm not nervous. You're nervous. Here comes the Chargers-Vikings game on Sunday. It's so funny how this works, right? We have a devastating loss last week. Things are not looking good for the season, and yet I'm still excited for Chargers football on Sunday. You know what's funny? Earlier in the season, I did a show with the Guilty as Charged guys. Of course, check them out. And they asked me on that show what my most anticipated game of the season was going to be, and I actually chose this one. It was for a couple of different reasons. I think the biggest one, though, is the fact that the Chargers and Vikings, both of these teams are very entertaining, right? Both of these teams put up a lot of points, and I even thought before the season started that we were headed for one of the biggest shootouts of the Chargers season just in week 3. Now, yes, I'm excited for this game. I think it's going to be a very fun game to watch. I do expect the, weekly Chargers heart attacks in the fourth quarter, but I also have to point out this is a very important game for the Chargers on several different fronts. Jobs may already be on the line as early as week 3. Prolonging consequences as far as our chances to make it into the postseason might be here as soon as week 3. The season may very well be on the line in week 3. So we're going to dissect all of that. We're going to go over the biggest talking points of this game, some of the biggest things that the Chargers need to overcome. But I think more importantly than anything is going over the consequences on both if the Chargers win this game or if they lose this game, because both of them are pretty dramatic. Now, before we do get started, guys, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. If you guys want to get in on the best fantasy platform on the web, use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. And for those of you just jumping in for the first time, extra incentive. You guys will be able to get hit on this Lamar Jackson half a yard special, which of course is kind of like a free entry there. If you guys want to jump in on that, again, use code DIRECTOR. We'll match your first deposit up to $100. It's a good time to jump in on the fantasy season. Now, before we do jump into this rather important game breakdown, hit us up the like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. The small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. Let's get into this Chargers-Vikings game. By the lights, camera. Oh boy. Action. Your Chargers at Vikings game preview. What we're going to call this one? Season on the line, maybe? There's a lot to go over with that, guys. This narrative is pretty dang important. But before we jump into all of that, we got to talk a little bit about who's suiting up, who might be missing some time here with the Chargers injury report. Can we make this a little bit better for the screen? No? Okay, we'll have to live with what we got here. Now, we got Joey Bosa up here, questionable to play. I do think that Joey Bosa, in my opinion, is going to play this game. I was kind of thinking he wouldn't last week, and then he steps up and produces 2, sacks last week. I think for that reason, I think he's going to be able to be available for this game. Also, Dan Henley, who was previously unavailable for the Chargers, I think is going to be making his debut this upcoming Sunday. But probably the biggest players to note on this list are going to be Austin Eckler, who's already been declared out for this game. That is going to carry some consequences on how the Chargers operate in the run and even in the pass to the running back. And of course, Eric Kendricks, who's been out even since last week, is going to be missing this next one as well. Chargers did get a full practice of Mike Williams with a tiny injury scare there. Other than that, Chargers look, I would say, pretty decent. But of course, you're going to have to shift things around with the absence of Austin Eckler, I think, the most. On the Minnesota Vikings side of things, not too much to talk about here. I think the only out person they got is Marcus Davenport, the outside linebacker, which is certainly a good player. But of course, we've seen more dramatic days in terms of injuries. So let's start breaking down this game and what to expect. And of course, I'm not going to waste any time with you guys, man. I'm sure you guys saw in the opener today, I'm going to come up with something cheeky, right? The Justin Jefferson sized elephant in the room. We got to talk about this, okay? The Chargers defense has not been very good. As a matter of fact, I would probably label him from poo-poo to just decent to definitely on the poo-poo side. And that's because the Chargers have allowed the most yards through the air through the first 2 weeks, which is absolutely bonkers to me. And on top of that, now we're facing the best wide receiver in the entirety of football. Okay, I think everyone was just kind of still like, oh, maybe Devontae Adams, maybe DeAndre Hopkins the last couple of seasons. Nah, man, after last year, then even coming into this season, I think it's pretty solidified in my mind that Justin Jefferson is by far and away the most dangerous weapon at the wide receiver position in the National Football League. The dude in the first 2 weeks is leading the league with a ludicrous 309 yards. This man is averaging over 150 yards per game, and the Chargers are going to have a tough time against that. If history is to repeat itself, as it did last week to the week previous, it is going to be a massacre out there for the Chargers defense. That's going to be crazy. Good wide receivers, I'll say, so far versus the Chargers, just good wide receivers are blowing us up, right? They're blowing up against the Chargers like crazy. Tyreek Hill, over 200 yards in his game versus us. The next week, he only puts up 40. Yeah, it was versus the New England Patriots, whatever. 200 to 40, that's absolutely insane. That's a pretty big margin in how bad the Chargers' pass defense has been. If Jefferson's averaging 150 yards per game against good defenses, I got to remind you guys, Jefferson faced the Philadelphia Eagles and then most recently the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. If he's able to put up 150 yards versus those particular defenses, which are very, very good, we are in trouble. I'm expecting a huge fat number for Justin Jefferson this week. If we have a shot at winning this game, man, we need to slow him down or put up a ton of points to counter what he's going to do this week. Now, of course, what's funny is that Justin Jefferson, I think he's got 300 yards, no touchdowns yet, which is kind of, speaking to maybe how the Vikings aren't sealing the deal with the yardage that they're putting up. Certainly not last week. I think Kirk Cousins with close to 350 yards, still lost that game versus the Bucs, Baker Mayfield-led Bucs. That kind of tells you that maybe the red zone offense isn't great, but versus the Chargers, I am definitely worried because the Chargers' red zone defense obviously hasn't been the best. The Chargers have been giving up big plays. I'm trying to get that is right now Justin Jefferson's going to be a big problem for us on Sunday. He's a big problem for any team in the league, even good defenses versus our particular defense. Are we going to see the first wide receiver to surpass 350 yards in a single day? I don't know about that, but it's going to be a rough day out there. It's going to be a rough day. We got to figure out a way to win despite the Justin Jefferson situation. Speaking of which, probably the biggest consequence of this game. Chargers fans often ask me, what's the biggest storyline? What's the biggest thing? Especially with what's going on behind the scenes right now with the Chargers. The biggest storyline, I think, this week is going to be this segment, last chance for Staley. His defense. We'll start with that. Okay, last chance for Staley's defense. All right, we're going up against, again, like I said, a very good offense. And the Chargers defense is going to need to maybe find a way to break the rhythm that they've created so far. And what I mean by that is Brandon Staley's defense is obviously inspired by Vic Fangio. He was a prodigy of that system. And that style right now is crumbling. Absolutely. At least under Brandon Staley's watch. I see that defense being utilized by other teams in the league. It seems to be working just fine. With Brandon Staley, for some reason, that's not working. Now, what this defense is designed to do, mind you, is prevent huge plays. I feel like Brandon Staley brought that system into Los Angeles to stop the Kansas City Chiefs. We need to stop Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill at the beginning of it, right? That's the number one objective when Brandon Staley was hired. And at first, I felt like it was doing okay, right? It's designed around, sacrificing things like run defense and other aspects to prevent the massive big plays, right? At this point, that's a laughable concept if you're a Chargers fan, because the Chargers have allowed the most yards, period, in the league. We've given up so many big plays to so many players. Tyreek Hill, obviously. Jalen Waddles had a big play. Traylon Burks beat Asante Samuel last week. Even guys like River Craycraft, was that his name? Chris Moore, these unknown guys, they're busting off for huge plays. If Staley is going to save his system and save any respect for his system, not just from us, but probably the players at this point. I don't know about you guys, but I'm picking up some vibes. He's going to have to prove it in the most dramatic situation possible, overcoming the best wide receiver in the league. Is the Staley defense, the Fangio defense, is that going to work against Justin Jefferson? Can it bounce back in such a dramatic fashion that this Justin Jefferson guy who's popping off for 150 yards a game can be slowed down with proper execution? I don't know about that. It really does feel like Staley is being thrown in the fire here. And I'm not going to say, it's impossible. If he can jump out the other side, let's say he limits Jefferson to like 95 yards, that would be a huge win. Huge win. But at the same time, is that going to happen with the track record that we have so far? The Chargers giving up the most yards through the air, the most yards period, but even through the air, averaging 330 yards allowed per game. Are we going to completely turn that around versus one of the best, passing attacks in the league? I don't know. I don't know. This could be the last chance for Staley's defense. As a matter of fact, this next segment, the last chance for Staley's job, even. I feel pretty strong about this, guys. It's kind of crazy how things are unfolding, but this is... It might be make or break as soon as week 3. If you told me at the beginning of the season, like director, like if Brandon Staley is going to be, under some heat and his seat's going to get, hot, how long do you think he lasts? I think 9 out of 10 times I would have told you like, he's going to make it to the end of the season, then we'll make a change after that. In this particular situation with the way the cards have been falling and with how obvious the coaching has been the issue here, I think this could be the make or break game for Brandon Staley, which is absolutely insane to me. And it's crazy to think. 3 weeks into the season, he's playing for his job on Sunday. Now, the Chargers, let me throw the reasons out why to you guys. The Chargers starting 0-2 is pretty horrible, right? Any Chargers fans will tell you we had to win one, if not both of those games. The Dolphins, both of those games were beatable, right? Lost by 1 score in dramatic fashion. Like, oh my God, the heart attacks and the disappointment. We should be, by all means, if we were that team, we should be 2-0 at this point. But starting 0-2, that's pretty bad. If we're to make it 0-3 this weekend, if the Chargers do end up losing to the Vikings, that goes from horrible to devastating to maybe even the end of the season. Because at that point, teams who have started 0-3 to begin the year have just a 2.5% chance of making the playoffs, folks. The playoffs. Now, it doesn't mean the season's over. If we start 0-3, absolutely the Chargers are still in it. There's only 4 teams to ever overcome that stat. It's the Lions, the Bills, the Texans, and guess what? The San Diego Chargers. But this could cause a huge wave. This could cause a huge wave in such a fashion that if the Chargers were to drop their 3rd straight game of the season, actually 5th straight game in a row dating back to last year, it could have huge repercussions. Huge waves. If the season really starts out this bad, the Chargers could do something drastic. And that could be a change at coach. That could be a firing of Brandon Staley. And with a very, very early bye week coming up, which is something I've always looked at as a really bad thing. I'm like, man, bye week 5, what are you doing? Football, what are you doing, NFL? Like, that's horrible. Give us a break here. Well, with the way the season's starting, that week 5 bye may actually help us out a lot because that will give another coach, a little bit of extra time to get into the groove of their new position. We'll talk a little bit more of that in just a second. Now, getting back to the Minnesota Vikings and what they offer as far as a threat. We talked about Justin Jefferson. I fully expect to get bent over by the Justin Jefferson stat this week in the Chargers defense. That's going to be tough. We're gonna get obliterated, okay? But the other thing I didn't talk about was the Vikings. They got other weapons, which is also kind of scary. The Vikings offense is very good. And this is why. This is why I picked this game. Because both of these offenses should be awesome. Jefferson's going to be tough, but they also have Jordan Addison, who they drafted. One of my favorite rookies of the draft. Unfortunately, they made it to the roster of one of our opponents this season. I love Justin Jefferson, man. They got, Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, excuse me. But they also got TJ Hawkinson, who got a nice contract with them. He's a great tight end. They got KJ Osborne, who I think is vastly underrated. They got Alexander Madison, who's off to a rough start, but my goodness, he's about to face a very bad Chargers run D. We got to worry about all that on top of Justin Jefferson, which is absolutely crazy. So this defense is going to have its hands full, man. Like I said, for last chance for Staley's defense, like, you are being thrown out of the pan into the fire, man. It's going to be a tough day. And I'm sorry, Chargers fans, it may be very tough for us to watch. Every touchdown, this is where I envision is going to happen. It's going to start out. Chargers, maybe start with the ball this week. We go and we score a touchdown in the first 3 minutes. Yo, we're getting hyped. Honestly, I can see, just like I think this happened last week, Vikings answer in like 2 plays. Here comes Justin Jefferson. Fantasy football owners are screaming like this may be the game, the biggest game of Jefferson's career. And I think we see a score, whether it be a touchdown or otherwise, like every 6 minutes of play. Maybe 8. I don't know. Like, it's going to get crazy out there, man. It's going to get crazy out there. And I feel like it's going to make every touchdown like, cool. Like, Chargers fans are going to be excited we scored. But my God, none of us are feeling good because here come the Vikings again. It's going to be a back and forth, back and forth. So a lot of weapons that we have to worry about from the Vikings. But on the offensive side of the football, I do got to talk about something here. We got a position for Moore to rebound this week. Now, Chargers fans very excited about Kellen Moore coming to the system, bringing in something new for Justin Herbert. And I would say it's off to a good start. Not a great start, but a good start. I would say week 1, great outing for the offense. We lost the game, not because of the offense, but the offense looked fantastic. Week 2, offense looked okay. The biggest reason I didn't like the offense last week is because there were several situations where we could put the game away, unlike the first week, that the Chargers just couldn't, for whatever reason, figure out. Like 4 opportunities. And so I'll say, yeah, they look great for a majority of the game. They crumbled at the end in true Chargers fashion. This week, I think Moore is going to get another chance to build on this system. And I think it's going to be a little different than we saw last week. Okay, it's going to be tough because the Vikings boast the 8th fewest passing yards allowed so far this year. So their secondary, whatever they're doing out there in terms of pass defense, is pretty good. However, they are a bottom 5 team in rushing yards. And that, I think, kind of works to Kellen Moore's advantage just a little bit. Because this could help Moore better execute his run game plan, which is already sort of proven. If you guys look back at week 1, the Chargers put up 200-plus yards on the ground. I think something very similar could happen this week. Now, of course, at the top of the video, we did see a very interesting storyline of Austin Eckler being out. Now, enter in Josh Kelly this next segment, because this is pretty important to the whole Moore situation. We need Josh Kelly to go out there and do some good with Eckler out. We can also enter, Isaiah Spiller, Elijah Dotson, who got way more carries than anticipated. I actually went on Twitter and I was like, hey, I hope for 7 or so carries. I think it ended up being around that. These backups are going to have to really step up this week. And they're going to be put in a good situation. Because like I said, bottom 5 team in rush yards allowed. They're a bad run defense, is what I'm trying to get at there. A lot of people lost a lot of faith in Kelly last week because he put up a subpar performance versus the Tennessee Titans. But here's the thing. He was facing one of the best run defenses in the entire league last week. I honestly, if you put Austin Eckler in there, I do think we do better. And I do think Eckler puts up good numbers. Maybe okay. But it's not, how much better is it going to be? You know what I mean? Like, it's a tough run D. That is a tough football team to run against. When facing the Dolphins in week 1, however, it was a completely different story. Even, from a backup running back position like Joshua Kelly, he tallied, almost 100 yards in a score that week against a bottom 10 run defense. I think Kelly's going to have a pretty solid week this week, and I think it's going to help Kellen Moore really get that offense going. I'm thinking like 100 yards and a touchdown, somewhere in that range for Josh Kelly, just enough to really get the play action set up for Justin Herbert in the passing game. I think the run offense can be very important this week, whether it puts up 100, 200 yards, whatever. I think it needs to be good in order for us to have a shot at taking down the Vikings. And I think, honestly, with how the Vikings defense has been trending so far, it's a good thing for us. I think we're going to be able to accomplish that. This next segment, though, I think to wrap up the offense, called Herbert's Revenge, this is where things can get kind of crazy. I picked this game as a favorite for this season for a reason. Both these teams like to score a lot, okay? And Herbert, who had a modest game last week, I think he's going to bounce back big time this week. I think this game could break the Vikings' current trend of being a good defense versus the pass because of Justin Herbert. And this is why. If you look at their first 2 games, they faced Jalen Hurts, who's a great quarterback. He's great, but a modest passer, right? He definitely relies on that run game. And they also faced Baker Mayfield with the Buccaneers, which kind of speaks for itself. I think Justin Herbert is by far the best passer they'll have faced so far this season. And I think this game will surprise some people in terms of the result. A lot of people aren't expecting Justin Herbert to go out there and put up crazy numbers. I think we could change that this week. So far, the Vikings, they haven't allowed 200 yards passing. I think it's about to change. Because just based on how these two teams play, I think we're gearing towards, again, like another shootout. Again, another reason why this is my favorite game, one of my favorite games of the season. And this may be the largest shootout of the year. I picked this game for a reason. It's got to turn out that way behind a Justin Herbert. And because of this, I have a feeling that Justin Herbert is going to have a day. With a much weaker run defense, I think the Chargers set up the play action a lot easier than last week. I think Herbert does some good damage when he's got a solid run game behind him. I think Justin Herbert behind Keenan Allen, behind Mike Williams, behind Josh Palmer, who's been fantastic. Let's get Quentin Johnson more involved, please, as well this week, and Darius Davis. Let's get these weapons involved a little bit. I think it's going to be a big day. And honestly, I'm going to go ahead and say it. I think Justin Herbert slings it for over 300 yards this week. I think he may be forced to, as a matter of fact. We have to keep up with Justin Jefferson after all. And the Chargers, who I think are going to have success on the run, are going to set themselves up beautifully to try and keep pace through within the passing game with Justin Jefferson. So I think Justin Herbert, I'm going to say, yeah, over 300 yards this week. And I think he's going to put on a show. Now, to help wrap this video up, a little couple of concepts behind the defense. The secondary, I don't know what more to say about this because I do think the secondary can have a better day than they did the last couple of weeks, including guys like Michael Davis, who's been underperforming to start off the year. And they're still going to get torched by Justin Jefferson, Addison, Osborne, the rest of them. All we can hope for is that they bounce back to just good, right? They've been so bad. JC, Michael Davis, Sante Samuel, everybody outside of Derwin James has just been downright awful. If they can step up their game to just good, where, in my opinion, just good is still going to give up 150 just to Justin Jefferson alone, I think we can overcome that. But if the secondary remains as bad as it has been, I don't know if we'll be able to overcome another 200-yard game by a single wide receiver like we did with Tyreek Hill. I honestly, guys, in my gut, I feel like Justin Jefferson's going to... I don't know what the record is for the most receiving yards in a single game, but I feel like in my gut it's going to be over 200 again. Maybe even more dramatic than that. I don't know. It's going to be nuts. If the passing defense can step up and just alleviate that a little bit, it would go a long way. But the biggest strength I think the Chargers got going for them right now is going to be their pass rush, which the reemergence of Joey Bosa has really helped things out starting last week. I'm not actually quite as sure what the Minnesota Vikings look like in terms of their pass protection, but I do know it's not great. What did Kirk Cousins have last week? 4 fumbles? 4? Well, you guys remember a couple years ago, Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack, I think. Both of these guys are going crazy with the forced fumbles. I would like to see that return this week. Chargers pass rush has been pretty great since last week. I think Joey Bosa with the 2 sacks, Tully with the 1. I think 5 sacks total last week. Versus a team that just gave up 4 fumbles on their quarterback last week. I think it's going to be a pretty good day for the pass rush. And it should help things out in terms of the defensive backs a little bit. In terms of, less time having to cover, maybe more opportunities for interceptions. That's probably the biggest aspect of the defense that will help us this week. I think is going to be the pass rush. And I think it's going to end up being the strength of this defense for the rest of the season. I was really expecting coverage to do that. But it feels like the pass rush is starting to trend in a direction where it's going to be the strength of the team, which is definitely not a bad thing. But we need all the help that we can get this upcoming week versus even, a Kirk Cousins. He's just got the weapons, man. He's got weapons all over the place. So to wrap up this video, a lot of people are asking me the consequences of this game. I'm going to share them with you right now. If the Chargers win this game, if the Chargers find a way to rally, and the Chargers find out to out-Charger the Charger Viking vibe, because they're a very similar team to us, I'm not going to lie. The Vikings and the Chargers, they feel like the same team on opposite conferences. If the Chargers find a way to win this game, it catapults our chances, and I can't believe I'm talking about this week 3. It catapults our chances to make the postseason to 25%. If we start the season at 1-2, the season's been saved. We can get back on track. If we lose this game, however, our chances go down to 2.5% to make the postseason. And if we lose this game, guys, I don't care if you think it's a hot take or whatever the situation may be. If we lose this game, I think the Chargers are going to fire Brandon Staley. I'm not trying to be dramatic or come up with storylines here. I honestly think that's going to be the result, whether it's now or by the bye week or whatever. And I think the Chargers elevate Kellen Moore to interim head coach. Because the more I'm looking at this situation and the more I'm seeing just how bad the coaching is and just how bad the consequences of that have been to start the season, I think the Chargers may have all along had a plan for Kellen Moore that Kellen Moore maybe even knew about. Because, of course, the Cowboys, they parted ways with them for their own reasons. But Kellen Moore, I think, had an opportunity to go out there and interview for head coach. He had already been doing that before. Why would he go and be an offensive coordinator somewhere else? I think it's because the Chargers maybe have a plan that he's aware of, or at least somewhat familiar with, that if things go sour with Brandon Staley, they needed a contingency plan. They needed a guy who could step up that may have been a head coach candidate for them anyway and save the season. And it could be Kellen Moore. If we lose this game, I think, honestly, if I'm throwing hot takes, I don't even know if this is a hot take. I think it's just something I believe. I think the Chargers fire Staley and bring in Kellen Moore as our interim head coach this season. And then if he does well, obviously, we'll keep him for the long run. However, my prediction for this game, like we always do, my score prediction, is not going to reflect that. My score prediction for this game, Chargers 37, Vikings 31. Again, in a crazy shootout. It could be even more than that, guys. Honestly, I wouldn't be shocked if both these teams make it into the 40s. That's how crazy I thought this game was going to be at the top of the season. And with how bad the defense is, I think it's possible. Either way, I think the Chargers do find a way to rally and win this game. I think the Chargers do find a way to save their season, giving themselves a start of 25% chance to make it to the postseason going into week 4 after this game. And I think the Chargers can find their rhythm before it's too late. I'm not going to say, and a lot of people ask me this, like, Director, I kind of, part of me wants us to lose so that we can fix the Brandon Staley situation now and get it over with. I'm going to tell you guys right now that I don't think there's ever a situation where I'd want us to lose, especially this early. It's hitting our chances to make the postseason so dramatically. I will never vote against the Chargers in that situation. But I'll also tell you guys that if you're really, really in that wheelhouse of I'm done with Brandon Staley, I want Kellen Moore, there is a world where the Chargers win this game and they also fire Brandon Staley. And it's going to be because the players, and this is something I'm actually going to predict right now here too, I think the Chargers win this game despite really terrible head coaching. I think the players step up and make big plays. They overcome maybe bad play calling by the defense, especially on the defensive side of the football, bad execution due to coaching issues. I think that the players in big moments, they're the reason. If the Chargers are going to win this game, they're the reason that it happens. And you can still win a football game that doesn't reflect well on the coaching. And I think that is still a possibility if that's what you guys are aiming for. But it's a complicated situation. We're only going into week 3. We're going to be monitoring it very, very closely. But a lot is on the line this week. A lot is on the line this week, guys. I cannot reiterate this enough. The season may be on the line. Coach Staley's job might be on the line. Chargers' hopes might be on the line in just week 3. It's going to be a big game. Big game. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. And please leave a comment in the comment section below what you want to have happen, man. I think ultimately all of us want to see the Chargers win. Are you guys, if the Chargers do end up winning this game, are you guys still in on Brandon Staley? You're out on Brandon Staley. What's the situation there? And if the Chargers do end up only having a 2.5% chance to make the postseason, do you think the Chargers can overcome that stat with a different head coach? You guys let me know in the comment section below. Well, guys, again, thank you so much for joining me. Catch us next time, and as always, bolt up, stay frosty, and I do believe we have a chance to win this game. Are we going to hold Justin Jefferson under 200 yards? I don't think so, but I think the Chargers can still find a way to overcome that.